Hello, Void. We're back and with something a little better. Warren Gel's going to be putting out a lot more of these. Here I am again. And I'm not reviewing The Wolfman. Not today. Not yet. This is a collection, and there's actually one film that preceded The Wolfman. Most of these, then I don't believe it actually has a canonical connection, but Werewolf of London is the one I watched today, a 1935, which came out about a good 6 years before The Wolfman itself. And this movie, it's an important one in kind of cinematic history, as it's largely regarded as the first commercially werewolf film. It's pretty much the go-to, and it inspired a lot of tropes that are common today. In fact, it pretty much turned existing werewolf mythology on its head. Pretty much at the time, that a lot of werewolf myths and legends were rather different. Back then, folklore, a werewolf was created deliberately through witchcraft and could change into a wolf anytime desired. It was more considered a satanic creature or whatnot. So the fact of werewolves passing on their curse via being bitten, changing under the full moon, and that they could be man-wolf hybrids, all originated here in this movie. So, considering that's all mainstream werewolf now, puts this film into a little bit of an important place in history. So, good on it. Also, the movie is largely regarded as having one of the more realistic werewolf howls out there, as they actually blended the actor's voice with the cries of a timber wolf. So, and the howl was pretty decent in the movie. Makeup effects, not nearly as strong, particularly if you compare it to The Wolfman. They actually originally were going to go with a design more similar to the Wolfman, but were concerned about how that would play in front of an audience and that it might not pass censorship boards at the time, since 1930s. But the design isn't bad. The werewolf has kind of a ridiculous widow's peak going on. Now, it does differ from more contemporary werewolves in a few other means. The werewolf doesn't seem to be particularly harmed by silver, and they are able to fight off the creatures with pretty much anything on hand. So regular bullets work just fine. Also, there's no real connection with wolfsbane. This movie uses an entirely different and largely made-up flower that bloomed by moonlight. I believe it's made up. I'm not a botanist. I don't know. Main character in this movie, he's a botanist. I'm not a botanist. I can't say for sure. But anyway, plot. So it starts with our botanist friend going to Tibet and searching for a rare flower that only grows in this one region. So, let's see, what was his name? Dr. Glendon. Anyway, Wilfred Glendon. And here's some tales about this valley where the flower is said to grow, being full of demons, and no one that goes there comes back alive. Well, he goes pish-posh to that, goes down to the valley anyway, and finds his mysterious flower. As the flower is blooming, it's clearly a night under a moon. It doesn't really show that very well, but that's probably because black and white. So, and he is attacked by a man-wolf creature and bitten. However, he drives off the creature, takes the flower, and goes back to London. Now, there's also a big subplot about his wife being largely ignored by him as he's working to see if he can get this plant to bloom outside of its natural habitat. It's having some problems there. And her rekindling a former romance with someone else, with a childhood friend, because she's being neglected. But mostly the movie focuses around, well, not only him becoming a werewolf, but meeting Dr. Yagami, a scientist who claims to have met him before while in Tibet briefly, that was also looking for the flower. it's pretty obvious right away that Dr. Yagami was the werewolf that bit him. Now, he's there trying to warn him that, look, this flower saves off werewolfism, and in order for us to save some men, I need to work with this plant with you. But he's rebuffed. Now, the plant is not a cure for werewolfism, but if they pretty much take a flower and like use it like an injection, weirdly, stabbing the flower directly into you, I guess works. But it'll just stave off the symptoms for one of the 3 nights of the full moon. So you need a good 3 blossoms to get through. Well, that's ignored, and Dr. Wilfred turns into a werewolf. Proceeds to go on the prowl. Now, in this one, they also have the stipulation that a werewolf most often will seek out those that it loves the most and try to kill them. And this one, it does do the man-wolf hybrid, but this one, his clothing is completely on and fine. In fact, he actually puts on a trench coat and hat before going out. The movie plays more like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of story, rather than a traditional bestial werewolf. The werewolf seems to have complete human-like faculties, despite being howling and snarling the whole time, but he definitely plans and reasons and seems to pick his victims a bit more. Definitely drawing more around Jekyll and Hyde than, well, I guess it already abandoned, at the time, traditional werewolf lore, establishing its own, so I guess didn't have anything else to draw from since it was making things up wholesale. But, as the authorities begin realizing things are going strange, now the Wolfman has enough sense about him that when he hears about the attacks, the wolf encrusted actually goes and frees a wolf from the zoo just to cover his own trail. So, like I said, the wolf is thinking pretty clearly on how to interact. And Dr. Wilfred Henson does realize the next day that, oh, I'm a werewolf. So, however, his plant keeps not blooming anymore, so there's only a limited number of blossoms, and he's having problems getting it to bloom. So he has to keeps trying to sneak in and out of his lab to encourage his plant while going into hiding to keep away from everyone he holds dear. And it goes from there. All the while, Dr. Yagami keeps trying to steal flowers to keep himself okay, as well as he wants to help Dr. Glinson, but he's not having it, still doesn't trust her, isn't having any of it, and keeps pretending to everyone else that he's fine. Despite him being all wolfy. Now, the movie is very 1930s. It's pretty basic, and I will say it had an hour and 15 minutes. It's not a long sit by any means, but it does enough to hold your interest, and Dr. Glinson does a good job of trying to balance protecting his family while at the same time pushing them away while not wanting to. So it's well acted, and the effects are pretty good for the time. The fading in werewolf effects are decently done, even if the werewolf himself doesn't look the greatest. But overall, it does have a good place in cinematic history, and definitely is worth a look. It is very dated, so 3 MacGuffins is kind of what I'm going to be giving it. It doesn't really, as much as it did pioneer things at the time, because those things are so familiar to us, it doesn't really deliver much. But I still have to give it a nod of respect, so actually, let's kick it up to a 4, just because it did pioneer all those things that are so standard today. It was an influential enough movie. We'll go 4 MacGuffins, even if it's not really that scary of a movie or anything like that in this day and age. So we can get the 4. Why not? Check it out though. It's interesting as a little bit of a time capsule for werewolf lore. Think that's all I got on it. So see you next time, and probably pretty soon. Have a good night.